Hello, welcome to another episode of Arthritis and You, A Joint Journey. Today, we've got something special lined up, so buckle up because it's time for the deep dive. Let's give a warm welcome to our hosts, Arthur and Sarah.
All right, buckle up everyone. Today's deep dive is a little personal, something I know many of you are eager to unpack. Lupus and pregnancy.
Definitely an important one. And it's great that you've gathered some solid information to dive into. Those Alberta rheumatology resources you mentioned, the YouTube videos and articles, those are a great place to start.
Absolutely. They're packed with insights. Going through them, I was really surprised by the whole relationship between lupus and pregnancy. It's not as straightforward as I initially thought.
You're right. It's not a simple cause and effect thing. It's more like think of two separate processes happening at the same time. They can exist independently, And a lot of that comes down to this incredible organ, the placenta. It's like a protective barrier between the mother and the developing baby. But even with that protection, it's not like we just forget about everything.
And that makes me think about pre-pregnancy planning, especially when it comes to medications and things. I know you mentioned some are okay,
Whoa. Slow down there. Medications are definitely a big part of the conversation. But before we even get to that, we have to talk about the importance of having your lupus under control before even thinking about conception.
So laying down a good foundation first.
Exactly. Ideally, you want to see lupus stable for at least, say, 6 months before conception. This helps minimize the risk of flares during pregnancy, which is better for both you and baby, of course.
Got it, 6 months. So can we talk about the meds now? The videos and stuff mentioned a lot about managing them during pregnancy, and I have to be honest, it's a little overwhelming.
Totally understandable. But here's a key thing to remember. Just stopping all your medications isn't always the best solution.
Really? I always thought that, protecting the baby from any medication exposure would be, top priority.
Oh, absolutely. Baby's well-being is crucial. But we also have to consider what happens if lupus isn't well managed during pregnancy. It can be risky for both the mother and the baby. It's all about finding that balance, managing the disease while minimizing any potential risks from medication.
So weighing the risks and benefits individually, basically.
Exactly. Every situation is unique, and that's where having a close relationship with your rheumatologist is so important. They are your partner in all this. They help you understand the risks, walk you through the options, and create a plan that feels right for you.
Okay, that makes sense. So getting into some specifics, I noticed the videos talk about antibody profiles and how those are important. What exactly are we talking about there?
Great question. Remember how we talked about the placenta being a barrier? Well, antibodies are like these tiny messengers that can sometimes slip through. And some of them, like these things called antiphospholipid antibodies, they can increase the risk of blood clots. Imagine a traffic jam in your blood vessels. That's kind of what these antibodies can cause.
And those clots, they can be dangerous during pregnancy, right?
Yeah, unfortunately they can be, especially early on. They can interrupt the blood flow to the baby, which can lead to complications, even miscarriage sometimes.
Oh, wow, that's scary. But good that doctors know about this and can watch out for it.
Exactly. Your doctor might recommend blood tests, especially if you've had a previous miscarriage. And the good news is there are treatments like blood thinners that can significantly reduce that risk.
Okay, so knowledge is power. Early detection. Are there other antibodies people should know about?
Yeah, another one is the anti-Rho, anti-Low antibody. Now, here's the thing about these guys. They often don't cause any problems outside of pregnancy, but during pregnancy, they can sometimes lead to something called neonatal lupus.
Neonatal lupus, that sounds kind of intimidating.
I get it, but don't worry too much. It's usually temporary and reversible. Basically, the baby's immune system is still developing, and sometimes those antibodies from the mom can cause a little reaction. A lot of times it's just a temporary skin rash.
So how long does it usually take for those symptoms to go away?
It can vary, but those antibodies naturally clear from the baby's system within the first few months of life. Now, in rarer cases, these antibodies can also affect the heart's rhythm, a condition called neonatal heart block.
Okay, that one sounds a bit more serious.
It can be, but again, early detection is key. Doctors monitor for any signs of it, and if it's detected, they can give the baby medications to help regulate their heartbeat.
Wow, so much to consider even before getting pregnant. It really seems like getting that antibody profile checked is super important. But what happens once pregnancy is actually happening? Do medications become a bigger concern then?
Absolutely. That's where things get even more interesting, and that's where all that pre-pregnancy planning we talked about comes into play. But let's delve into that a little bit later.
So last time we were talking about how medication can get a little, well, I guess tricky is the word, during pregnancy. It really does seem like a balancing act, making sure those meds are managing the lupus, but also not, doing anything that could harm the baby.
It's all about finding that balance. You got it. Now, the resources from Alberta Rheumatology, they highlighted a few medications that are often seen as lower risk during pregnancy. These include low-dose prednisone, hydroxychloroquine, and azathioprine.
Wait, hold on. Now I'm a little confused. Because I thought I remembered them saying that prednisone should be avoided during pregnancy.
It's good you're paying such close attention. You're right, high doses of prednisone, those are generally not recommended, especially during that first trimester. But sometimes those lower doses, they might be necessary to keep those lupus flares under control, even during pregnancy.
So again, it's all about that risk versus benefit thing.
Exactly. Every single case is different, right?
Yeah.
And that's where your doctor comes in. They're going to help you figure out if the benefits outweigh those potential risks.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about those other medications you mentioned, hydroxychloroquine and was it azathioprine? Any risks with those?
Well, while they are generally considered safe, it's really important to remember that every medication has some potential risks, even if they're very minor. Like with hydroxychloroquine, there's been some, I guess you could call them theoretical concerns about fetal eye development. But when you look at the large studies, they haven't really found a clear link. And as for azathioprine, some studies have suggested a very slight risk of things like, premature birth or low birth weight. But again, this is something your doctor would be monitoring very closely.
Sounds like having that really open communication with your doctor is key throughout all this. They can walk you through each medication, what it might mean for you, and address any concerns you might have.
Absolutely. Don't be shy. And remember, it's not just about the medications themselves. It's also about monitoring your overall health, throughout the whole pregnancy.
So are there any specific tests or appointments that are extra important for pregnant women who have lupus?
Well, along with the regular prenatal care that every expecting mom gets, you might have to check in a bit more often with your rheumatologist. These visits, they might involve some blood work, maybe to track your kidney and liver function, check those antibody levels, and just get a good sense of how the lupus is doing overall, staying ahead of it.
I like it. Proactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then depending on your individual needs, maybe your medical history, some additional monitoring might be recommended. Like if certain antibodies are present, more ultrasounds might be a good idea, just to see how the baby's growing and developing.
So it really is all about that personalized approach, which is good. But I can imagine that all of this, the appointments, the medications, the just not knowing how things will go, can be a lot emotionally,
Oh, for sure. Pregnancy alone, with those hormones shifting and all the changes happening, it can be a roller coaster for anyone. Add lupus to the mix, and it's understandable if those feelings get amplified a bit. I think having a strong support system, whether it's a partner, family, friends, maybe a therapist, or even those online support groups, having those people to lean on, those people who understand what you're going through, can make such a difference.
It really is so important to find that support. And when we're talking about navigating the unknown, it makes me think about, well, the future. Because research around lupus is always changing and evolving, right? What are some of the things on the horizon, those advancements that might impact pregnancy down the road for some people?
You're absolutely right. The research is always moving forward. One area that's really interesting right now is this development of what we call targeted therapies for lupus.
Targeted therapies, huh?
Yeah.
What makes them different from, I guess, how lupus is treated now?
So a lot of the medications that we use now, they work by suppressing the entire immune system, right? Which it can be effective, but it also comes with the potential for side effects. Kind of like using a sledgehammer when what you really need is a scalpel, Targeted therapies are more like that scalpel. They hone in on those specific immune cells, those pathways that are going a little haywire in lupus, and that helps to minimize those, what we call off-target effects.
Ah, okay, so less collateral damage.
Exactly. And that is huge, especially when you're thinking about planning a pregnancy. Imagine managing lupus really effectively, but with way fewer risks to a developing baby. That's the goal.
Wow, that would be incredible. It really gives me a lot of hope for, what the future holds for women with lupus who want to become moms.
Me too. It's exciting. And it's not just about new meds either. We're also learning so much more about all the lifestyle factors that play a role in lupus. Things like, oh, what you're eating, how much you're exercising, even just how you're managing your stress levels. They might seem small, but those things can make a really big difference.
It's easy to forget about those lifestyle things sometimes. When we think about, managing a condition, we often jump straight to the medication.
For sure, but taking that, I guess you could call it a holistic approach to managing lupus, it is so essential. We're complex, right? Our physical health, our mental health, it's all connected.
It's about taking charge of your well-being, not just relying on the medication, but really making those positive changes that can, help tip the scales in your favor.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about being proactive, being informed, and working closely with your healthcare team. All of that together helps you make those good choices for your own body, but also for your future family.
Love that. Well, this deep dive has been amazing. We've covered a lot. I feel like we've gone from the science of it all, the lupus and pregnancy connection, to understanding the medications, and even peeking into the future a little.
It's been my pleasure, really.
Mine too. Now, before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a little something to think about. We've really focused on the medical side of things, but just as important is the human side. What other resources or support systems do you think would be really valuable for women with lupus who are either planning to get pregnant or are already navigating motherhood?
That's a really important question. And honestly, I think it deserves a lot more attention and discussion than it gets.
I agree. It's about building that sense of community, right? Mm-hmm. That feeling of empowerment, knowing that you're not alone on this journey. And on that note, we'll leave you with that food for thought. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, knowledge is power. And until next time, stay curious.
This has been another episode of Arthritis and You, A Joint Journey. Brought to you by the Rheum team from albertarheumatology.com. Your trusted, evidence-based suite of resources available 24/7. Straight from Alberta, but for folks around the world. Our hosts today, Arthritis and Sarah Lupus, technical producer, John Ifan, and our executive producer, Stephen Cates. While we work hard to maintain the accuracy of our information, we accept no legal responsibility for any errors or omissions. Remember, always check with your own physician first. Join us next time for another Deep Dive.